Okay, welcome everyone. It's 11:30 and I'm ready to begin Freshman Families Q&A. I'm Greg VanSlambrook. If we haven't met yet, thanks for spending your time with me this morning on this Monday. And for any of you, we'll also be recording this so that people can view it afterwards. So just opening to thank all of our families, along with all of our students for all of your efforts in our safe reopening and everything we've been through so far. This just a little bit more background than what I sent you in the email, and then I'll get right to your questions. I sent the email last week with our updated plan to return freshmen to the opportunity to come to school every day. We've all felt, I think everybody feels from the beginning, that in-person education, if we can do it safely, is going to be the best for everybody. As we started the year, we have a hybrid model that has been very safe in many ways. We've been pleased with the safety of it and with everybody's cooperation with that. Academically, there's been a lot of positives to it. I think our teachers have handled it really well, and our students have, on the whole, done very well with it. But there has been more struggle than we've had in a typical academic time, as you'd somewhat expect. So then the question just becomes, what's the priority of how can we help? To what extent can we help, and for whom? Because with limited space. So we decided some time ago that we really needed to prioritize the freshmen. From hearing more and more feedback about freshmen struggling, more freshmen with low grades, with the social and other adjustments to a new high school, that a hybrid model was particularly difficult for that. So we thought if there's a time that we're able to bring just some students back, we would start with the freshmen. That is what became clearly the case as case rates started to go down back a few weeks back, down below 5% positivity rate. Then we started planning for, okay, how can we bring some students back? Since then, positivity rate, as you know, has gone the other direction. And so there are some concerns with that, and there continue to be, and we'll continue to keep a close eye on that. And I even put in the message, you might have noticed, these things can change, and even this plan could change. But at this time, in consultation with our medical task force and in our own planning, we felt like we can add in these freshmen with the plan that we have without additional risk that still makes it worth doing. So I'm going to talk more about some of the details behind that. You saw a lot of detail in the email and in answering your questions. I've got about 20 pre-submitted questions here. Some of them are repeats, so I'll probably end up answering about 10 to 15 questions here that have been coming on the pre-submitted form. If at any time while I'm talking, you want to ask an additional question, please use the Q&A button on the Zoom controls. And once I'm done with the pre-submitted questions, then I'll go into that Q&A on the Zoom and start going through those questions. And I am scheduled to stay on here until 12:30 or until I get through all those questions, whichever comes first. And again, happy to spend this time with everybody, and just grateful for everybody's adjustments that everybody's been making this year. Our parents and our students and our teachers. I'll say again, this plan is a lot of work for our teachers to move locations. The whole hybrid system is a lot of work for our teachers. I'm grateful to them and for all the efforts that they've done. And I thank you for your expressions of gratefulness to them, as I mentioned in that email. That's been very meaningful to them. So here we go with I'm going to share my screen, which is going to show you questions one at a time that have come in since I posted this last week. You'll be able to see these along with me, and I'll read each of the questions and then answer verbally as we go. So first question is, when can the rest of the grades come back to school? I'm hearing comments from upperclassmen. I wish we could go back to school. Lots of other schools, public and private, are in class full time now. I'm concerned about the upperclassmen and mental health. There's a lot of time home alone. So back when we surveyed all families last, which was about a month and a half ago, we get a real range of comfort levels with this. We get a number of families and students like this thinking we really like all of our students to be back full time. We've heard from almost as many families and students who are less comfortable with being back full time. So when the positivity rate had been falling and we had been thinking about doing some level of further reopening, we knew it was going to have to be phased in one small group at a time, or smaller than the whole school. When we started the school year, I think we thought about it as either hybrid or 100%. But what we're doing here is a measure in between, is bringing some back and prioritizing the freshmen. And so at this point, I know we are planning for at least the 10th through 12th graders to stay hybrid through the end of the first semester. And we will reassess and make our decision for January at that time. But at this time, the only students who are coming back as a full class full-time are the freshmen, and I would expect that to be the case through the end of the first semester. We're definitely aware of and trying to care for the challenges all our students are facing in the hybrid situation right now, and we'll continue to do that as best we can. Second question is a concern about several questions on this theme, concern about the recent trends in the case rates, which we're definitely watching closely. So the question is stated, the cases per day in Marion County are at an all-time high. Why would we put the freshmen at greater risk? I'm not sure the benefits of the freshmen being together as a class outweighs the risk. So my response to this, really the way that I see it, is that since we're able to keep the freshmen at 6 feet apart in the classroom, I think the amount of additional risk we're taking on here is very, very minimal. So the risk that you see in terms of close contact when students are close together, when they're not able to social distance, if mask wearing is not consistent, that's where the risk comes in. Adding the freshmen in and moving all these class locations, if we have them coming into the same classrooms less than 6 feet apart, then you would say that we're trading off there a greater risk. But I think when we're keeping them 6 feet apart in larger spaces, if a freshman is in class now every other day, having them come every day and still be 6 feet apart when they're in the classroom and be able to social distance around the school and their PRTs and so on. As I said in the message, adding from about 400 students a day to about 500 students a day, our building can handle that capacity, especially with the change in PRTs that we made. We think they'll still be able to social distance when they're in their free times and passing periods, and they'll still be able to be 6 feet apart in the classroom as they're seated and required to be, as well as when they're eating. So I see the additional risk as very minimal at this time to the freshmen who are coming back each day. Next question, if a freshman has to quarantine for 14 days, will they be able to Zoom in with their classroom like they did during the hybrid schedule? The answer is yes. So we will still have the capability for students who are at home to join class from home. However, it'll be more limited, slightly more limited than it is now. Currently, in all of our regular classrooms, students can see through the cameras and the microphones, the visual that we've had set up so that they can have the maximum from home ability to participate in class live, to be able to see what the class sees, to be able to speak live with the class. We'll have less of that capability in a lot of these spaces. So not every freshman classroom, but some of these new freshman class spaces like the auditorium and the chapel, they won't have that same capability, but freshmen will still be able to join from home. They'll still log on the same way they have before using the Google Meet. They'll be able to hear what the teacher is saying throughout the class. They'll be wearing headsets. They'll be able to see what the teacher has on his or her screen live on the Google Meet like they have. And so they'll be able to hear and to take part in class in that way. What they won't be able to do is to be able to see the classroom view through a camera like they can in the regular classrooms. And they will not be able to verbally participate as seamlessly as they do now, although there'll still be some opportunity to verbally participate. So that won't be true of all their classes, but it'll be true of whichever ones of their classes move to some of these different spaces, which they'll learn more about from their teachers. In any case, students who are either still in the silver cohort as freshmen or are moving to the silver cohort as freshmen, or who are absent for precautionary reasons like quarantine for close contact, they'll still be asked to join classes from home like they have been doing. If my student chooses to switch to silver, are they still allowed to participate in a Brebeuf sport? Yes, we're not changing our policies on that. Students who are silver cohort are still able to come for activities after school. The second question from this same respondent, cases are rising at record high rates. This is not the time to bring more students back. We also would have appreciated if you had sent out a survey asking for the community's opinion before making the final decision. I understand that. So as I said, we did survey families about a month and a half ago, and I felt like I got a great response rate from that and felt like I had a good sense of how people were feeling about those things at the time, about the effectiveness of in-person versus at-home learning, as well as people's feeling of safety. And in between have gotten a lot of anecdotal and conversational and email feedback from people, enough to feel like we have enough of a finger on the pulse of things that I feel aware enough about that to make our decision based on other factors rather than sending out an additional survey. I do always like hearing feedback from people in guiding decisions, and so what I anticipate doing is a survey before the end of this semester as we consider things for next semester, which will also include the experience of the freshmen, give us the experience of what this every day has been like, and we can learn from that. So that's my approach for surveys in the past and future. Next question. That's a repeat of the question I just answered. Students cannot socially distance now in the classroom. How will they be able to socially distance with double the amount of students in a classroom? So I would respectfully disagree with the first statement. We do have students spaced apart in the classrooms and have measured out 6 feet. And that's what I see as I walk around our classrooms and with our students. And the answer to the second question, how will they be able to socially distance with double the amount of students? The answer is that any class that includes more than 14 freshman students, 14 will fit at 6 feet apart in our traditional classrooms. Any class that has more than that, we're moving to one of these larger locations. So we have a couple of classroom spaces that can fit upwards of 20 students because they're much larger, usually combined 2 rooms with a temporary divider, which will be opened, or to the chapel, the auditorium, the band room, what's called the France Stone Room, which is a large conference room here. Those will also accommodate more than 20 students 6 feet apart. So we've assigned, I believe the total number ended up being 60-something classes to new locations. They're not all to bigger locations. Some of them are just swapping with slightly bigger classrooms or swapping with other classes to accommodate their moves. But the point is we've reassigned any class where students couldn't be 6 feet apart to a place where they can be 6 feet apart, still able to social distance in the classroom. Next question, in light of the surge in cases in Indiana, particularly Marion County, where the positivity rate is now close to 8% and rising, it does not seem like this is the time to be bringing back the freshmen full time. We all understand the impact this is having on the kids' well-being. However, safety first. What are you basing your decision on? So I'll simply repeat what I said in the email from last week. Frequently asked questions, why are we doing this? We're doing this based on an assessment of our risk of bringing the freshmen back. It's able to do that at a low risk level because of the ability to still social distance, and of the high need of the freshmen as we can assess it of being back in school full time. So those two things put together, the meeting the high need, as well as the relatively low risk of bringing them back in our view, is the main part of our decision. The other piece, I guess you bring timing into the equation. There is a point at which community case transmission rates would be high enough that we would change course, but we're not there yet. And I continue to get feedback from our medical task force to make that determination, as well as from the Marion County Health Department. The Marion County Health Department, last conversation I had with them a couple of weeks back, they were comfortable with schools returning to situations where you bring some more students back in the building as long as you can keep them 6 feet apart. So our decision is partly based on the Marion County Health Department as well. And the timing, as I mentioned in the email, we've been wanting to give the freshmen this last part of the semester being full-time to have the benefits of that before the semester ends, before we get all the way to the break. And also as a way to learn from how that goes as we assess what we should do for January and beyond. So the timing of it is significant as well. I think if we didn't do it here in the next couple of weeks, we probably wouldn't be able to do it until at least January. We wanted to be able to do it before then, given all those other things I already said. Second question on there, it seems that many of the positive cases so far at Brebeuf have been around sports teams. That is true. If the plan is to continue to have contact sports such as football and also bring back the freshmen, there seems to be a disconnect there. If sports are being prioritized, maybe contact sports players should remain in the silver cohort so as not to put all the other students at risk. So we are carefully keeping track of where cases go from where they originate, contact tracing, and in how they spread. To this time, the football time that we had a number of football players come out positive and all had to quarantine. As far as we know, they did not spread it to anybody else outside of that cohort, the football team. And we just recently had one, as you've probably heard, with another sports team, which also at this time is contained to that team as well. So it will make a difference to us if it was spreading beyond those teams to the rest of the students. What that shows me is that, yes, those contact sports are higher risk for sure, a higher risk of transmission if you're opting to participate in those activities. But even those same students, if they're in school positive without knowing it, they're not spreading it to other students before they realize it and are at home quarantined because of the social distancing, masking, and other careful procedures that we've had here. So far, we've had no cases that we know of transmitted within the building from one student to another, and that's another piece of the puzzle. So I would, again, respectfully disagree with the phrase sports are being prioritized. I think we're still having sports as an option for students who want to participate in a way that they can do that doesn't bring additional risk to other students. That's what we see happening so far. I think students and families are taking on that risk of the possibility that they will transmit it among themselves, and people are willingly taking on that risk or not. Again, if we were to see that risk be spread to the rest of the student body, that would be a different story and one that we would be making decisions by differently. Next, For students who join the silver cohort, are allowed to participate in sports? I've answered that question. Answer is yes. About joining the silver cohort. If a student joins the silver cohort, may the student return to campus at some point, or must they remain in the silver cohort? For example, at one school, students may opt to go online, but they're allowed to return to campus beginning any Monday. What we're going to say is that, and I hope it was clear, but I can't remember how it was worded in the email last week. If you are joining the silver cohort, then you're committing to that through the end of this semester. And then we can reassess and change plans in January. You'll have that option if needed. But for that decision, through our last 3 academic cycles, last 5+ weeks of school, if you're joining the silver cohort, then you're committing to it for basically the months of November and December, and then it'll open back up beyond that. Next question, Marion County's weekly score is currently 1.5. What is the weekly score that would move all students online? And what is the weekly score that would move freshmen back to the hybrid schedule? So we're basing our decisions on the Marion County dashboard, which I've linked to in my messages before. What you're referring to here, the 1.5, is the Indiana State Department of Health map. I'm going to go back to the Marion County numbers. So we're looking at the positivity rate and the cases per day, 7-day rolling average that Marion County is looking at. I haven't identified a score, a particular number that would prompt either of those decisions, but what I'm doing is weekly or more often checking in with an update on the numbers with our medical task force and asking them if that moves us to the point where we should shift course. I'll be checking back in with them again this week, to tomorrow or Wednesday, with an update on our numbers. We share our internal numbers with them, the same ones, but a little more detailed than what we put in the in-depth for everybody, as well as the case rates given by Marion County and the Indiana State Department of Health. So I don't have an answer to that in terms of a particular number, but I can tell you that we are looking at multiple times per week and are very open to, if it gets too high in either of those positivity rate or cases on a 7-day rolling average in Marion County, of changing course. I would rule that's still happening in the next couple of weeks. Next question, based on the COVID-19 school guidance dashboard for Marion County, high schools are to be using a hybrid model. Why is Brebeuf deviating from this? So good question. This is what I referred to when we had a direct conversation with Dr. Kane from Marion County Health Department 2 or 3 weeks ago about bringing students back within a hybrid model. In other words, phasing back in, this exact thing I've been talking about. Not everybody coming back all at once, but bringing some students back. And a number of other high schools have done this to phase things in, as opposed to jumping right to 100%. And Dr. Kane's clear response on this is, if you can keep them 6 feet apart, if you can continue to social distance, keeping them 6 feet apart in the classroom and when they eat, if they're masked, if you're following the screening procedures and so on, but especially if you can keep them 6 feet apart, is what she kept going back to. So we are still keeping students 6 feet apart. And that's why we feel like we have Marion County Public Health Department's support in making this adjustment. We still have a hybrid schedule for most students. The point of the hybrid schedule is not a hybrid in and of itself. The point of the hybrid schedule is to create enough space that students can socially distance in the building. And we are continuing to do that even within this plan. I already answered this question about silver cohort and ability to come back. And same time, oh, I'm sorry, this is the kind of the reverse. May a student opt to try the full-time in-person for a short time, and if they do not feel safe, e.g. social distancing is not observed, students continue to not wear masks when they're not being supervised by teachers, can they join the silver cohort? I think we want to know from everybody so the teachers know by this Friday if you're going to join the silver cohort. However, I would say that if we learn, a student learns or sees that they're not feeling safe, I'm not going to force them to keep coming to school every day. I can't force anybody to keep coming to school every day. So if that is your situation, reach out to me, and I expect that we would be accommodating to you. Next question, for students who decide to move to the silver cohort, should they begin struggling academically, what resources will be available to help them? Can they move back in person? I've already answered the second part of that question, but the resources available to help them. So we will be keeping in touch with students who move to the silver cohort closely through their academic counselors and through their teachers. Students and their families should work to keep open a dialogue, and I expect counselors and teachers will as well, with student progress when they move to the silver cohort. And I think our teachers and counselors will be very attentive to that need and to doing interventions with that student if that comes up as a need. So we'll all be being very attentive to that starting next week when that starts. Follow-up question, kind of in the same vein, how many freshmen are currently in the silver cohort? The answer is 5. Since the announcement on Thursday, how many have signed up to join the silver cohort? The answer, to my knowledge, as of today, is 1. Again, you have until this Friday, please, to let us know if you want to be on that list as well. I've already answered this question, public health metrics, the Marion County school dashboard, positivity rate for Marion County, and the cases per day, additional cases per day. And I would also add to that our internal data, which is what I share with you every Thursday on In Depth. Our internal number of cases are incredibly important as well. This next question, I believe I've already answered. It's again, with the cases rising, why are we making this decision? Do you have any plans or procedures to increase fresh air exchange given the higher concentrations of students and closed windows due to colder weather? So this is harder to do during the colder weather for sure. We continue to encourage teachers to open windows whenever they can. It's harder to do when it's colder, of course. In some of these spaces, they're very spacious, so that helps when you have 25 students in an auditorium as opposed to 25 students in a classroom. That does help. The not keeping students in a single space for more than an hour class period helps. And in terms of air circulation, airflow, we just had a topic come up in a meeting last week and talking about additional tweaks to make to our HVAC system to increase the air turnover in terms of circulation is the #1 priority. So we are kind of, as this year goes on, working our way through the building of ways to make upgrades to that as much as we can. And this last one is a repeat. I think it's actually the exact same question as was asked before. I think it must have been submitted twice. Okay, I'm going to stop sharing my screen with that form and instead go into the Q&A, the live Q&A button that have come in since I've been talking. So first question, for those of us who are not comfortable with fully in-person, hybrid is no longer an option. Interested in rationale on why this cannot be an option. So we think that this will be a situation if some students are hybrid, some students are in person every day, and some students are silver. That is impossible to organize from a classroom organization, teaching, and also student learning standpoint. Students who right now are in hybrid are known, you're gonna have these students here on maroon days, these students here on gold days, these students are gonna be silver, and they're always gonna be online. As a teacher, you can plan well for that. As students, you can plan well for that. In terms of student groups, we're still trying to operate classrooms with having group work, with having presentations, with having a lot of things that depend on students being live, whether they're in person or at home. We've already communicated to the students as well as in an email that it's important that they come on the days that we're expecting them to be here. And so our assessment, if we thought about having students in person all the time, or some of them hybrid and some of them at home all the time, is that would get unmanageable for teachers and students alike to the detriment of learning in the classroom. And so we've taken that option out of the mix. Next, when and how will we receive updated schedules with new room numbers for classes and PRT slots? So I don't expect to send those to parents at all, although if any parent called me and asked for me to run through it for their student, I could do that. We're going to let the students know which classes are moving through those classes. Those teachers will let them know when and where to meet in their new classroom space and how that will be set up and how that'll work. They'll let them know that, they know that already, so they might be letting them know already, and they'll certainly let them know before it takes effect next Thursday. And as far as PRT assignments, those again will be, we haven't finalized all those. They're being communicated to teachers later this week, and teachers will let students know when their PRT meets in terms of when their class meets during the PRT time. As I said in my email, that'll be rather complicated for students to adjust which time does our PRT meet versus a class meet. They'll have to go class by class and probably write it down on their schedule. I've seen our students do schedules very well over the years, even rolling with the punches of changing schedules. I think it'll be fine, but we have, there's no single view of that I could give that would summarize it well for parents. We're going to communicate it directly to students, and I think they'll be able to roll with it fine between them and their teachers. We already answered the next question. Criteria, bringing back the freshman full-time has exceeded the tolerable risk. I would say that once we've done it, as we continue to carefully monitor the community transmission and the within school numbers, the question as it's asked here number of in-school transmission. The number of in-school transmissions is very important. And like I said, we haven't had, as far as I know, any in-school transmissions. Just the number of students in our community who are positive, quarantine and whatnot is important as well. So we're looking at that number very carefully. Right now, what's been happening in Marion County is that the numbers overall have been rising. As Dr. Kane has pointed out in her last 2 press conferences, the school-age children are not rising. They were actually falling a little bit, even as some students were coming back to school in some places like Washington Township and IPS. So those numbers are important, as well as our internal numbers of how our students are faring, as well as the rest of our community. They've been very good so far. That's one of the things that gives us the confidence to do this. And so we'll continue to keep a close eye on it. If that changes, then we would certainly take steps to reduce some of these steps to reopen, right? I think that also answers the next question. At what point in case numbers, I can't give you a number, but I can say that we would certainly be open to rescinding it based on case numbers if they were to go in the wrong direction internally or in Marion County in general. Next one, just an observation, but most positive cases around sports seem linked to non-school approved social events within those sports, not taking part in the sport itself. I would say that's true, not just of sports groups, but of all groups of students. You know, I certainly heard as much as you probably did about rumors more than anything else around Halloween parties and gatherings and so on. My assessment is most of our students and families are being very safe and smart about these things. Knowing that it's also very difficult for all of us to completely curtail our social engagements. I think we're just all asking all of us to limit ourselves in smart and safe ways for the benefit of both yourselves, but of the entire community, of everybody that you're around. So I guess in response to this question in particular, I see that happening among sports teams. I also see it happening among non-sports, just social groups, hear about it, I guess. And, you know, best we can do, I think, is to educate everybody as much as we possibly can, which is the point of Q&As like this and all the messages we send out, and, you know, following up whenever we can when we hear about those kind of things, and to be able to just help people make the best decisions for themselves and for others, and to try to use the values of our school community to help to reinforce and to guide that, trying to care for each other in this time, as well as for ourselves and our families. Next question, will families departing the state for Thanksgiving or holidays be asked to quarantine before returning to school? To me, this is a significant risk of spread upon return from upcoming breaks. If quarantine is an unreasonable option, what precautions can be taken? So we have had the message from the beginning of the semester, and I'm sticking to this, that it is possible still to travel safe and smart, and so to not require a quarantine upon return from travel if you're doing it safely. Certainly travel of all kinds is recommended to be reduced, if not eliminated, but there's also travel that's essential, and there's travel that is being chosen for a variety of reasons, which we respect. There's different institutions I know that are handling this differently. Some places saying that if you're on a certain list of states with certain case counts, if you are coming back from those states, you need to quarantine. We have not taken that approach. We've taken the approach of the CDC, which is what we've linked to the CDC website and all of our travel guidance, which has specified that before you travel, you should figure out ways to minimize your risk of COVID transmission. And knowing that we believe that in most cases, or I would say in many travel cases, in a discretionary fashion, you can make your travel no more risky than your day-to-day life around home. So that's what we've seen. We haven't seen from previous break times, Labor Day, the other days of days off that we've had of possibility of travel. We haven't seen spikes after those. We're currently closely looking at the numbers following fall break. And as I mentioned, we do have some positive cases right now as a result of a team practice that wasn't because of travel. It was because they were practicing here during fall break. And so that's our guidance. It is, if you are returning from travel where you haven't had increased risk, like it says in our self-screen, are you returning from travel that increases your risk of COVID transmission? If you're coming back from travel, which is not more risky, then you don't need to quarantine. That's what we believe is the prudent way to do it. But if you are returning from travel, then quarantining is a smart option. And we did see a number of more students quarantining after fall break for precautionary reasons than we would usually have. So we appreciate people being cautious in that way. That's the main, when you ask what other precautions can be taken, the precautions are really to be taken while you're traveling. It's continuing to be careful about masking and distancing and hand washing and all those same things. And when you get back, I think, it's a matter of, if you think you're at higher risk, you should quarantine for 2 weeks for 14 days. That's the CDC guidance. And if not, then just continue to, like you do all the time, monitor yourself for any symptoms and don't come to school sick and all that kind of thing. But that's no different than it usually is. Okay. I don't know what you're all seeing on your screens. I'm pushing answer live and then done. When I'm done answering them, I'll continue to do that. Hopefully the view is working for everybody. Can you get specific about what kinds of issues prompted you to bring freshmen back full time? What leads you to conclude our freshmen are struggling socially? I believe they are, but what are you seeing that reinforces this? So first, you can talk about academically. We have a process that scans student grades, that flags students with low grades, that works to proactively and reactively both work with them through their academic counselors and other supports. We have a committee of faculty and staff here that work on that regularly throughout every school year. And so we've got years of experience and data and looking at those numbers. We in the first few weeks of school, we didn't see any issues, although early, with not a lot of grades yet. Once we started seeing some substantial grades, test grades, quiz grades, that kind of thing, be significant parts of students' grades, we ended up seeing at some point about a month ago, I remember the number from that committee was about double the number of freshmen with being caught, kind of flagged for low grades than usual. So that's a big concern. And then second, on socially, I think we get that more anecdotally than anything else. I mean, I think our teachers see it. I see it around school every day. Students are you're less interactive in this situation. In class, even around, in the common spaces, there's less people around. There's less ability for people to get together in groups, which is how kids naturally like to interact. That's a comfortable way for people to interact. And so when you don't have the ability to do that day to day around the building, that's going to naturally curtail your ability to adjust socially. In many conversations with parents, just kind of asking how things are going, or hearing that from them as well. So it's a combination of anecdotally and just observationally, talking with the students too around the building. All that, I think our faculty and staff were at a pretty consensus level about that about a month ago as we were looking at it. Said we really need to focus on our freshmen and their transition time. Transition to high school is tough enough for freshmen as it is. Throwing this into the mix makes it a lot tougher. And so that's our assessment. Next, how will this change impact lunch or where they eat as weather gets colder? So we're continuing to make sure we keep them 6 feet apart to eat, and we're continuing to do that by sending some classes to the cafeteria, but most classes in grades 9 through 11 are being kept in their classrooms to eat. Now in these larger spaces, again, they can still be 6 feet apart. So I think some of those classes will probably end up splitting them up and having some of them go to the cafeteria, supervised by the prefects there, and some of them stay in the classroom supervised by their teacher. So we're still able to get 6 feet apart by using the combination of the classroom spaces in our cafeteria and other eating spaces, even with this change. If we were to go to beyond 500 students to 600, 700, 800 students, that would be different. And that's one of the reasons we're not doing that yet. But with just adding the freshmen, we're still able to have space to keep everybody 6 feet apart while they eat. Next question, will this change the frequency of tests for freshmen since teachers have shared that most learning during hybrid is being assessed by homework and quizzes currently? Any change to final exams? Good question. I don't know what to anticipate with this quite yet. We have 3 academic cycles, like I said, 5-6 weeks left. I don't think it'll change teachers' curriculum planning in terms of how many tests they have left in the semester too much. Although I wouldn't rule out that some teachers might feel like, okay, this is a situation where I can more fairly assess them through a traditional test now that they're all in front of me. So I would say you might see some differences here and there, but I wouldn't expect major differences since we're not doing this at the beginning of a semester, but we've already got plans through the end of the semester in terms of the curriculum, and we'll probably still be carrying those out just with this different setup. And there's no change anticipated from what we've already said about final exams, which, as a reminder, is that we're not having what we've done in the past of our traditional final exam days. Those of you who are new parents won't know what that is, but it's not a special schedule for final exams. They go straight through regular school days through December 18th, whatever that Friday is. And most classes will not be giving comprehensive, large-scale end of the semester exams. They might be taking a test on the last days of class or giving a final presentation or writing a final paper. But we're anticipating one of the adjustments making to assessment during this semester is not traditional, comprehensive, all semester long final exams. I think probably for obvious reasons. Let's see, I think I've answered these couple questions already. answered that one. All right, to me, this decision makes me feel like Brebeuf is forcing first years to choose between risking their grades or increasing the risk of contracting or spreading COVID. What would you say to a student who's conflicted with these thoughts? So first I go back to the, if we thought it was a much greater risk, I don't think we'd be doing it at this time. But since we can keep them 6 feet apart, I don't believe it is a much greater risk to them of contracting or spreading COVID. So that's my assessment of that piece of it. And then risking their grades, joining the silver cohort, like I said, I think that the students who are making that change will have teachers that are being very attentive to that change and their needs and be on top of it and making sure that they're able to keep consistent with the work that they're able to do. So I think we'll all be just keeping a close eye on the kids who are staying at home, and we'll be able to support them, especially at the small numbers that they are now. But even the students who are here, I see it as, it sounds like you're seeing it as a choice between two bad options. I really think they're two pretty good options as far as it can be in 2020. Not everything's, nothing can be perfect in 2020, but the option to be here is, I think, keeping within our safety protocols of social distancing, masking, et cetera. And the option to be at home gives them still the ability to be with their classes. They know their teachers, to be with their classes every day and live with them, and to have the ability to keep up from home too. Okay. The other questions I think I've already answered, or maybe I just didn't hit. I've already answered this one about receiving updated schedules. And I've already answered this one about when a student can go to silver cohort. Okay, I see a few things that popped up on the chat, so I'll make sure there's nothing new on here before we sign off. Question of where we can view this Q&A later today if you missed a part of it. So we post these to our YouTube channel every time. So watch the Brebeuf YouTube channel, and I think it's linked to our Facebook page as well. Oh, actually, Mike Higginbotham already emailed or included a response to this. It'll be posted to Brebeuf's YouTube channel. We'll be emailing a link to all freshman families as well, and that recording will be available later this afternoon. Thanks, Mike. All right, that's it from the chat too. All right, there's no additional questions in. So again, thank you for your time today. If you have additional questions that you didn't want to or get to ask live today, you are more than welcome to email me anytime at gvanslambrook@brebeuf.org. Stay tuned between now and November 12th as we get closer for more updates, reminders, anything else you need to know. If there were any change of direction due to case numbers out there, we will be very communicative with freshman families in particular between now and then. So thank you all again for being with us today. Appreciate it. And hope you have a great week, and our civic duty tomorrow with election day, with our virtual day. Thanks for your support and having a virtual learning day from home on that day. I think it's important for all of us to focus on our civic duty tomorrow. So looking forward to that as an educational institution, of talking with our students about all that this week. It's a dense, busy couple weeks. I'm always gratified by how much our students love being a part of it. And that's always given us energy, even in times when it's hard to have energy. So God bless you all. See you soon.